Why not? 2 podcasts in 1 week. Kevin's Corner. We're coming at you twice. Been a while since we've done that in 1 week, let alone 72 hours. I'm Kevin Bowen. Chris Presley across the way. Man, I can't think of the last time we did 2 podcasts in a week. Maybe draft?
Yeah.
You know, you got to go back to late April, but some sense of normalcy.
Mm-hmm.
And when Chris Ballard talks, you got to recap it.
Absolutely.
And he had his annual Zoom, or I should say his annual pre-training camp presser via Zoom on a Wednesday morning, late morning, and then Frank Reich followed up as well. So we'll get into a lot of that on today's podcast, recapping especially what Ballard had to say. Reich, should be available on a somewhat frequent basis here over the next couple of weeks and obviously throughout the season. But this could be the last time we hear from Chris Ballard in quite a while. So I want to hit on that. I think we got a good rundown of Twitter questions.
We do.
So we asked for those this morning. We're taping this late Thursday morning. And so if there's any other crazy news that breaks from an opt-out standpoint, hopefully that won't happen for multiple reasons, but I don't envision another pod until like middle of next week.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where we're at right now. I think that's all the logistics of it. I don't think anything else really stands out.
You got to love in your role, your job, how refreshing and just blunt Ballard is in all of his press conferences.
Yeah,
I love listening to Ballard talk.
Yeah, he is a great quote, if you will. Very candid. And I say very candid, and when you compare him to the other general managers around the league, and even his predecessor, Kevin Pritchard's the same way for the Pacers. Both of them I think are very much in the same boat. So I enjoy it. He was probably 45 minutes, maybe not that long, but it was well over half hour that he spoke on Wednesday. So. Really, really appreciate it. Obviously, a lot of COVID-specific stuff, and we're going to go over a little bit of that. But still, there was some some actual football questions that he was asked and answered, and then just maybe a little bit of a look on how training camp will go and how much more physical the Colts feel like they will need to be in training camp to get them ready for the start of the regular season. So, yes, whenever Chris Ballard speaks, you listen. He's the decision maker. He's the one calling the shots for this franchise. And Jim Irsay gives him a whole lot of leeway in that, rightfully so. And, I always enjoy talking to Chris.
And it's been nice seeing, I saw Pittman and taking some throws from Eason, seeing some of those rookies and guys that have been able to report a little bit early. Actually, even though they were going, 25%, just nice to see guys with helmets on and running routes.
100%. And Frank Reich watching them a little bit. And yeah, I guess people might be a little bit confused on why the rookies are in the building. That's normal annual protocol with training camp. Basically what happens is the rookies always report, 5 to 7 days before veterans do. So they've gotten through all the testing, BS, if you will. I shouldn't say BS. It's obviously very serious, but you know what I mean. Yeah. Those several steps that you have to get through from a testing standpoint, as well do the quarterbacks. That's why we've seen Phillip Rivers have his little cameo with the Hickory shirt on, putting his helmet on and whatnot. They are already through those hurdles. And the injured guys, I should throw them into the mix as well. But the Darius Leonards, the Anthony Walkers, the T.Y. Hiltons of the world, they are just now getting into the test. Next day, test. Isolated, you test again, and then this weekend is when they'll start to get into the building, and next week will be all strength and conditioning for the Colts. So, rookies are allowed to be in there. The on-field work, as you saw, it's walkthrough.
Yeah.
It's nothing more than that. So, very, very limited, but these are steps in the right direction, and as long as we're taking steps forward in this, we're going to keep on acting like the season's going to start on time. I know internally there are some important people in that building that have questions about the season starting on time, but I don't think anyone knows, to be honest.
Yeah.
And you got to treat it like it is going to start on time, or else you're going to be playing behind the 8 ball pretty early in the season. The Colts have done that way too often in recent years.
Yeah, you talk about how they're taking the tests and the rest and waiting for the results and things like that. What else did Ballard mention in terms of a COVID overview?
Yeah, I would say the 2 biggest things stand out to me, Chris, is this. It's all going to come down to testing and how you behave. And those are 2 very different actions, but they will be absolutely paramount in how this season is going to go for the Colts and for the NFL. testing standpoint, you can listen to WIBC for more on that, but it seems to be an issue in our country right now. And Major League Baseball has had some hiccups with it. The NFL can't afford that.
No.
You've got to be on top of it. I saw the NBA, they are paying for, I think, all of the Orlando tests, like people that actually live in the city of Orlando. You get free tests for the next month. Like, that's part of what the NBA is doing. I'll be curious to see if NFL teams, do that, if they feel like they're taking away from some of the amount of tests from a public standpoint. But basically what Ballard has done is he's taken head trainer Dave Hammer, who's a longtime trainer, been there really since the move, I think, or right around there. And he is the head of the infectious control team. And so he has basically reorganized that entire building to where you are very socially distant within that building. Frank Reich showed us his chip yesterday that he wears, his contact tracing chip. And basically it has a very quiet beep and maybe is the color like red or blue when you're not within 6 feet of anybody. When you get within 6 feet of somebody, it starts beeping louder, faster, and it changes colors to red or blue, whatever color it is in. So I think those are all, obviously necessary items to try and make this work. Dividers in between lockers, one-way hallways, meeting rooms are not going to look like every person right next to each other in seats. Meals have to be ordered prepackaged through an app, or you order through an app and then prepackaged. And I don't believe you're used to be buffet style.
Yeah,
and so they are not that anymore. Ballard, I thought, had a couple good quotes of calling it the ultimate test of discipline. I think that's a good way to put it. They feel like, and we've mentioned this on many podcasts throughout the offseason, they feel like the Colts are better equipped for this than other teams. And I agree wholeheartedly with that. I think there's a level of maturity, self-drive that the Colts have that maybe other teams don't have, 1 to 53 or 1 to 90 or whatnot. I when I say the behavior part, this is where I think Frank Reich and to a degree Chris Ballard will really earn their true colors of how do you instill that into your players. And I think Frank Reich getting up in front of the players and saying everyone needs to behave is one thing, but that's like your dad or your mom standing up in front of you and telling you to go the speed limit for the 1,700th time.
Right.
It doesn't resonate as much. And so how do you do that? And this is me personally talking. I think Frank Reich needs to get players in front of players. And as of right now, 11:18 on Thursday morning, the Colts have not had a player opt out. But we've heard the stories of Marquise Goodwin and, Patrick Chung and Donta Hightower and some of these other players that have opted out. They're opting out for very legitimate reasons. And sure, it is a help having 30 or 40 million in your back pocket and have won a Super Bowl. Definitely. But there are legitimate health concerns within these families.
Absolutely.
And if you're DeForest Buckner and you've got a 4-month-old, or you're Phillip Rivers and you got 9 kids, I remember back in March, or not March, but maybe June, whenever Phillip talked to the media last, he talked about they homeschooled their kids last year, and they might do it again this year, more of a COVID thing this year. I mean, that's something you would think the NFL would probably want players to be doing. But it comes back to the point of when you do something out of the building that is considered risky, whatever that is, you're not only putting yourself at risk, but you're putting everyone else at risk inside of that locker room. And then the domino effect is all of those family members that those players go home to on a nightly basis. And who knows who these players are living with. Maybe they've got an aunt. Maybe they've got a grandma. Maybe they have a sister, a brother, something like that lives with them. And they could have a health risk. And if it's anything from a respiratory standpoint or diabetes, whatever it is, I think those types of stories, if players are going to say, all right, I'm going to take a risk and play here because I need the money and, I feel like I can still be safe, I need all of you to buy in as well. Yep. I think player-to-player talk will resonate a lot more than just Frank Reich going there. I even thought about Kenny Moore and Jack Doyle are represented by an agent here locally named Buddy Baker. I think it's called Exclusive Sports Group, I believe is his agency. And tragically, his mother and father both passed earlier this year from COVID. Someone like that, how does that story not resonate to you? And an agent has a much, in a way, I think that they have the ear of a lot of players, obviously, because of that relationship, outside of a team building. So I think those are all just kind of some things that Frank Reich and Chris Ballard have explored, need to explore. Ballard mentioned the 4 keys of testing, contact tracing, social distancing, and then he threw sanitizing and wearing a mask into the same group. So, all of that matters. I know that this probably isn't the most politically correct answer, but for the NFL, what's happening to the Marlins, what happened with Lou Williams, that's good. Those are good things, because what is that doing? It's opening up everybody's freaking eyes.
Yes, it is.
They are wide the you-know-what open, and not because they want chicken wings at a strip club. It's because if you don't wake up, boys, gals, this ain't getting to mid-August.
Nope.
So I think all of that is beneficial to the NFL, because they are the last ones. They have all the learning. They're seeing all the screw-ups or all the hiccups elsewhere, and they're trying to get a handle on this as best as possible. So, that was kind of the basis of it. I think Frank Reich's a guy that's pretty well equipped for this. I've always talked about, I think we talked about on Monday's podcast, Frank Reich is, you hand him the 46-man roster at the start of the week, and he says, all right, let's go win a football game. Like, that's him. Backup quarterback. He is no excuses, no panic from him. That sounds like a cliche you hear from a lot of people. I think it's so true for Frank Reich. I think that's really how he lives his life. So I do think he's a coach that can handle this pretty well. I think that's kind of the old COVID rundown.
So as of 11:20 here on Thursday, as we're recording this, no Colt has opted out.
Right.
But remind our listeners of the podcast who might not know, what is that deadline or that drop dead date for players to opt out?
It's 7 days from when the final CBA gets inked, and we aren't there yet. So it's, I think, at least August 5th. And obviously there's a $300,000 opt-out for high risk, $150,000 for low risk or non-risk, whatever you want to call it, for those players. And I know a lot of people want me to predict, like, who. I'm sorry, like, Luke Rhodes' his wife's about to have a baby. Like, I have no idea. I mean, if I knew these people's personal lives, I wouldn't have my own family. Like, that would be way too much to try and understand. And nor do these players, want to be that forthcoming in that as well. I mean, Devin Funchess, sends out his message and mentioned family reasons, but he didn't go very in depth, into those family reasons, and that's fine. Some people want to keep some of that personal stuff. Has COVID, directly impacted close friends of mine? Yes, in a very family matter that would impact probably my willingness to play. But, to each their own. And I in no way, shape, or form know, what Anthony Costanzo's dealing with, what, Marvell Tell's dealing with. I mean, all ends of the roster.
Yeah.
You have no idea with these guys. Right now, the Colts have 2 guys on the COVID list, Malik Henry and Jackson Porter, two kind of the back end of the roster guys. So far, so good, but you're still testing right now. I mean, you're early on in that testing process. That's where we're at. And I probably think the other biggest thing will just be how the NFL handles the positive tests, because we've seen with Major League Baseball. I'm a Reds fan, and Mike Moustakas, Nick Senzel, both a little bit under the weather. I think on Saturday it was, never tested positive for COVID. Symptoms went away, and yet they didn't play for like 5 days. So it's like that, I think, is some of the more logistical hurdles the NFL's got to get through of, are you relying on your taxi squad? Major League Baseball doesn't seem like so far with the Marlins that they are. Now I know it's a lot of Marlins, but I think those are some of the hurdles that the NFL needs to get through to see, okay, if and when these things happen, how are we going to handle it, and how are we going to keep the season going? You can't play doubleheaders in the NFL. You can't play on a Wednesday and again on a Sunday. Like, you got to kind of go with it. And lastly, Chris, the bubble idea for the NFL is laugh out loud funny. It sounds good, and the NBA and MLS is having unbelievable success with it, knock on wood. I believe I saw the number $180 million for the NBA to run their bubble.
Wow.
In Orlando. That's 22 teams.
Yep.
That's a 35-person travel party for those 22 teams. I crunched the numbers. I won't bore you with those numbers, but that's 32 teams in the NFL. Probably 150-person travel party per team. They all have to stay in the bubble from July 28th to December 31st. Like, the NBA is losing 6 teams. They don't have 8 teams there to begin with.
Correct.
They're losing 6 teams in a couple weeks. Then they're going to lose 8 more teams by the end of August. That bubble's going to shrink a whole lot. Disney and playing basketball is a whole lot easier than playing football and having everyone available to a practice facility. Some people are like, oh, you can do sub-bubbles, around the U.S., 4 bubbles here, 8 bubbles. You're traveling. You're going to have to travel out of those bubbles. So it just sounds a lot easier than it is. It probably would have cost the NFL over $1 billion, honestly, if they would have done a bubble for the entire season. So, yes, the bubble works. The NFL is a different animal. And, getting players to commit to staying in a bubble for 5 months, too. If we're already seeing some of these guys opt out, can you imagine if bubble life was involved with it?
Yeah, I'm good.
I wanted to make sure that we mentioned that. I just think it's impossible. Which, yes, does it lessen the chance of this season being pulled off without a glitch? Obviously, without a doubt. But the NFL has time on their side, and they're able to learn. And now, hopefully, everybody can behave and the testing process can work.
Well, Ballard had to talk about that stuff. Very important. But Kevin, he also talked football. Something that we've been waiting for. We are kind of back. What were some of the intriguing positions that he spoke about?
Boy, it was a lot of COVID talk, and I tried to get another question there at the end, and I was like, intriguing position battles, and luckily he ran with it. He took a look down at his depth chart and decided to talk about it, and there were 3 that stood out to him. And I phrased the question, intriguing positions/battles. He threw out linebacker. He threw out defensive line. And he threw out the gloriousness that is the kicker battle here in 2020. Yes. Let's start with linebacker. I posted, I think it was on Monday, positions of strength for the Colts in 2020. Got a little bit of pushback from people on it that I had linebacker number 1. It's number 1 on Chris Ballard's mind. I mean, it is the best, deepest position group. To me, when you say positions of strength, I'm factoring in 2 things. High-end talent combined with depth. And I think that's what linebacker has. You have the all-pro. You've got the number 2 and 3 guys that people really, really like. And then you've got a little bit of depth that, is somewhat intriguing. Ballard groups the trio of Darius Leonard, Anthony Walker, and Bobby Okereke. He says, I'll compare that with anybody else in the league.
High praise.
Can't say I've looked at every linebacker depth chart around the NFL, but I think it's rather deserved. Now, you need Okereke to take a step. You need Walker to still be very consistent, and Leonard, maybe if you're going to nitpick a slight improvement on run downs, but obviously his playmaking speaks for itself. Yeah, I can't say I disagree with that. He mentioned E.J. Speed, a guy with some upside, and Zaire Franklin and Matthew Adams. We've talked about them as special teams guys in recent years. Obviously, Jordan Glasgow, the 6th-round pick out of Michigan. We'll see his ability to push for a roster spot. But, I mean, this is why they were number 1 on my positions of strength. It's not like I'm texting Chris Ballard asking him for that by any means. But you just look at it, and it's hard not to see why there's so much intrigue there. So maybe it's not like he got into the Okereke versus Walker head-to-head battle, but he doesn't have to say it for us to know it. Defensive line was the second one, and really I think it all revolved around Buckner, all around DeForest Buckner, and more so because yes, We know how much defensive line means to Ballard. We know that he knows it needs to be great, and it hasn't been anywhere near great over the past few years. But when he talks about the specialness of Buckner, it goes beyond tackles for loss, sacks, 16 games every season. I think I talked about this on Monday, but there's an amount of professionalism that I think Buckner brings to that group that I feel like Ballard was getting at with that, of the domino effect of put your arm around Tyquan Lewis, put your arm around Kamoko Ture, Banagoo. Are those guys all in the same place from a work ethic drive standpoint? No, but do they all need a little bit more? Yeah. And so I think that's where having Buckner in that room really, really helps. So I think that's where he was getting at. And then lastly, kicker. He mentioned Chase McLaughlin, Rodrigo Blankenship, did not mention Adam Vinatieri, of course. And I thought it was interesting that he brought up, we've got to create pressure-packed situations for these guys without preseason games. That's something we talked about on Monday's podcast. And to be honest with you, Chris, I don't know what the hell you do. Like, 80 guys hooting and hollering before they kick. You put on Zombie Nation and you crank it really loud before they kick. I mean, Rodrigo Blankenship has kicked, like you said, in front of 90, 100,000 person stadiums in SEC championships and national title games. Like, how do you equate that to, here we are inside of Lucas Oil and there's 100 of us in here and there's the media in section 234 and, Stephen Holder and Zach Kiefer making noise. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough. But that's it. That is the kicker battle. And so if they're on the mind of Chris Ballard, those three positions, they will continue to be on the mind for us all throughout this summer.
How does he see the camp intensity being this year? I mean, everything's going to be different.
Yeah, everything will be different. He mentioned how there will be a couple of occasions where things get ramped up. And I know I've touched on this a little bit, but what does that mean? The Colts, outside of maybe a goal line drill or two, I can't remember live tackling, especially in like the middle parts of the field, or like a true scrimmage. Like, it's not like here's your first team, like you're playing a spring game. Here's your first team offense going against the first team defense, and then you flip. Or, your second team offense plays against the first team, whatever. I don't remember that ever happening fully live. I get the quarterback still wearing a red jersey, but, tackling Marlon Mack after a 6-yard gain, things like that. Will that happen? They seem to think it'll be physical. Reich mentioned that he wants to get down to Lucas Oil a couple times, and those will be pretty game-like practice days.
They're going back to the old school 70s and 80s type of.
I can't see that. No. I mean, again, that's where I kind of draw the line of. And you also get into, okay, what if a guy misses his first week here? Now, is he catching up? Is he still going strength conditioning and individual stuff when you're doing full team? Because we aren't in full pads in the NFL.
Yeah.
Until August 17th. Now, you get 14 padded practices from then until September 5th when you make roster cuts. But just how physical it looks like, I probably need to see it before I'm all in on believing it. And I fully understand the balance and the difficulty of making that decision. Do I really need to see DeForest Buckner tackling guys? Probably not. But do I want to, do I think in the back of my mind that could help us win a season opener if he is going full speed? Then that's that would be just talk about, two different sides pulling at each other there. So for the Lucas Oil days, Ballard didn't seem to be maybe all in on the fans being there for that. I know that could be a possibility that some teams have thrown out there. But we'll see how that goes. I mean, to me, it's like, can you not throw some fans in the section 400, 500? I don't know. It sounds a lot easier, I know, than it is. So we'll see on that. Healthy tension was the phrase that Reich used. And Reich was like, look, these guys have a ramp-up period. 1 week of strength conditioning, 5 days of individual with helmets and no pads, and then we get into full pads. So let's go. And they were both really pleased with the rookie class that's already been in here and the shape that those guys are in. So that is positive. But yeah, obviously I'm all for the more physicality because it means truer evaluations and just it's more of a level playing field, if you will, to evaluate and try to see, okay, that's what these guys look like and this is what is different or this is what's the same. Those types of takeaways that you can have. But obviously that'll be a big storyline when the full pads come on.
One of the other notable topics that Ballard hit on was the salary cap picture for 2021.
Yeah. I guess I'll say for now the Colts are going to keep that roster at around 90. You're allowed to do that until, like I said, that mid-August date that comes. You've got to get down to 80. Ballard said that could be fluid. We saw them cut a tight end the other day, so I think it's at 89. I forget. I don't think the pup guys count, but I could be wrong about that right now. But for now, they're going to keep it around 90. That could change. No outside free agent visits right now. So I know a lot of people are still talking Clowney, still talking Everson Griffin. Those guys can't come into your building. If you are, which this sounds very murky, and there's a lot of gray area here. If you bring a free agent in for a visit, the intent is you are signing them. That's the phrase that Ballard uttered. Yeah, that's a lot of gray area.
Yeah, it is.
But, selfishly also, I mean, if you're bringing in a free agent, you don't know what they've been doing for the last 2 weeks. Like, you aren't just going to bring a guy in your building and tour him around the building and give him a physical if you think that, well, yeah, we're just, we might send this guy in 3 weeks. You're exposing your building to someone that you don't know a whole lot about, from a testing standpoint. But as far as the salary cap, Ballard, I thought, was very honest and like, okay, now we have some idea of what it's going to look like for 2021 and beyond. And we didn't have that, in past days or past weeks. So that murkiness is gone to a degree. And now he loves to use the phrase lines in the water. Now you can put a couple lines in the water for possible contract extensions. When I hear that, I think Ryan Kelly.
Yep.
I don't think T.Y. Hilton as much. I don't think Marlon Mack. I obviously don't think Malik Hooker, Anthony. There's a long list of those free agents. To me, Ryan Kelly is atop that list. We know they've had talks before. We'll see. Costanzo and Hilton, are two guys that, have signed contracts, right during training camp, right before the start of the season before. So it happens. But that is the name that comes to mind most often when I think about extensions that should get done.
Awesome. Well, if the listeners want to take on any more of your update from Chris Ballard, they can go to 1075thefan.com. You have that article up.
Yes. Yep.
But you want to jump into some Twitter questions?
Let's do it.
All right. The first one this week is from Jordan. Say Malik Hooker has a Pro Bowl caliber season and plays like everyone thought he would after being drafted in the first round. What do the Colts do, considering we have high hopes for Julian Blackmon?
Well, Jordan, I don't know if you saw, but Matt Eberflus was on our station's morning show earlier today and was asked, Stephen Holder was filling in, and was asked about Malik Hooker and talked about basically just tapered off late in the year. And there needs to be a level of consistency that he sustains over a 16-game season. But he also mentioned, and who knows if this is coach speak or whatnot, that he still feels like there is more there and he can get to that level. But Jordan, you ask here, if he has a Pro Bowl caliber season, what do the Colts do? Let's keep in mind, it's what do the Colts do and what does Hooker want to do? He is a free agent. That is a two-way street. Now, with your question, if you're the Colts, a lot will depend on the Julian Blackmon knee situation. You look at your books, you look at your contract situation, you figure out, okay, how are we making this work? Can we make it work? Do we want to make it work? It's a bit of a, decrease in cap, or do you want to invest that much into safety? Because if Hooker has a Pro Bowl caliber season, he's looking at a 4 or 5 year deal, probably paid, I don't know, top 5 safety money, top 7 safety money. I mean, if he's if he's been a middle of the pack starting safety right now, if he has a Pro Bowl year at that age, he's going to be one of the higher paid safeties in the league. So, are you ready to commit that? And we know what you're committing, for Leonard. We know what you're going to commit for Nelson. You got the quarterback dilemma as well. So, those are all the questions. And obviously a ton goes back to your belief in Julian Blackmon. I tend to think that the price tag would be too high because I think the market outside of Indianapolis would drive that up.
Mm-hmm.
And again, Malik Hooker, what is he going to think? What's going to be his mindset? So, those are my thoughts on it, Jordan.
We talked about how high of praise Ballard gave the linebacking core. Sam's question falls in line with that. With the Colts being high on Bobby Okereke, could you see the Colts playing more of a base defense to get Leonard, Walker, and Okereke on the field at the same time?
Sam, I totally hear you. Boy, you feel like the Colts would be so much better equipped with this defense for, 2003. But I hear you, and my first thought is this. What about Kenny Moore not playing his best position? Kenny Moore in the slot is his best position. If you have 3 linebackers, it's not like you're having 3 defensive linemen and Leonard's putting his hand in the dirt. As intriguing as that sounds and as curious as I would be, you probably aren't doing that. So that would be my first pause to that. And I would say the other point on this, too, is it goes back to kind of the Jim Irsay comments in February that we talked about with Bobby of if you think he's a Pro Bowl talent, then I also have this internal battle with myself of like, why is he on the bench? Or, why is he on the bench for that much? Of course, and I also think about why do you want one of your more consistent players on the bench as well? So I totally hear you, Sam. It's tough. It's not easy, but I still think in today's NFL you got to play a good amount of nickel.
From Yuri, congratulations on the new baby.
Thank you, Yuri.
Do you think it hinders or helps the Colts to have no preseason? For instance, does the fact that Rivers, having been there and seen everything, help the Colts when other teams have rookie quarterbacks with no preseason?
Well, I guess you're looking at one end of the spectrum or the other. Now, I would say this. I mean, how many rookie quarterbacks are starting, Burrow. Tua's going to start, right? But Herbert's not. Tyrod Taylor, I saw.
Well, do they start with Fitz and let ease Tua in?
Yeah, see, I mean, I'm team throw the dude in the freaking fire, but that's me. But yeah, I guess, unfortunately the Colts, yes, they do play Cincinnati, but it's not like you're competing with Cincinnati and Miami. There are a lot of quarterbacks that fall very differently on the experience scale. Rivers didn't play in the preseason last year, but before that, for a guy that's been in the league for, 15 years, he still would throw like 15, 20 passes every year in the preseason. So it's not like he was, all right, I'm going to wear the visor and the earpiece all of August. I still think, Yuri comes down to he's throwing to new personnel for the first time in his career, like entirely new personnel. Mm-hmm. And I think the hardest thing, and this is for every team, this is not just Rivers, but for every team throughout the next month, is you can try to simulate and you can try to throw situations together, and you can even take the red jersey off, mimicking game speed against different color jerseys. You cannot truly get there. You can try as hard as you want. You can get close, but you can never get fully there. And, a 3rd and 7 week 1 and Josh Allen's pinning his ears back and coming at you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You can't get all the way there. So I think that's just a little bit of a hurdle that everyone's going to have to get over. Rivers is a veteran for sure, but him and Hilton and Pittman, all these guys being on that same exact page, we won't know it until things get real in September.
This one's from Shad. Prediction on who is going to be the biggest surprise at camp or a guy you're expecting to take the biggest leap this year?
Yes, Shad. We've touched on this at different times throughout the offseason. I put Kari Willis really high on that list. I put Paris Campbell really high. And the thing about Campbell that I keep on wanting to stress, he doesn't need 8 catches a game. He can impact it with 3 or 4, folks. Mm-hmm. He doesn't need a whole lot. This is not a volume guy. This is a they're going to show me on SportsCenter one time, and that one time could be the difference in the game. This is not death by 1,000 paper cuts. This is a guy that just 2-3 touches, and defensive coordinators can't sleep the rest of the year. Like that's what he can do for you. And I would say the guy that we lose sight of a lot talking about in the defensive line room because he's not a draft pick. I think he was a 7th rounder by the Saints and was claimed here, is Al-Qadim Muhammad. He's an effective rundown defender for you. I think he's kind of a younger Jabal Sheard in some ways. Could he be the early guy out there? I still like Danico Autry, but could he be an early down guy for you?
Dan wants to know what Baby Bowen's best combine stat is. 40 time, short shuttle, bench press.
Oh, wow. Well, Rosie Bowe's 10 pounds, so I don't know what she's doing on the bench so far. Yeah, unfortunately for Rosie, I don't think anyone would call Maddie Lubbers Bowen or Kevin Donahue Bowen an explosive athlete. I don't think that phrase has ever been uttered for either of us. We aren't the greatest testers, per se, in combine drills. And to be fair, Maddie was a terrific volleyball player for 4 years in college. So, yeah, I don't think Rosie Bowe is going to be a blue trait combine athlete. I think she might be more of a kind of a stick and ball sport, you know?
Hey,
we kind of pride ourselves on hand-eye coordination. Seems like lacrosse is the new thing. I don't know much about it. I'd probably prefer golf and softball. But, yeah, she'll be effective on the field. A coach will want her out there. But, no, we aren't talking blistering 40-yard dash times, short shuttle. I'll tell you what, she can move her neck, though.
There you go.
I don't know what that gets you. Maybe bench. I don't know what that gets you. But she can move that thing for 7 weeks old.
Jenny wants to know, were you expecting Teray to start on the PUP? Any idea what injury Mo is dealing with?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Teray, we gotta keep in mind what that injury was for Teray. That was a dislocation and a fracture in October. So PUP, I feel like every year this happens, everyone sees players show up on PUP and they're like, oh shit, oh god, oh no. Patience. They can come off PUP at any day now. If you have an injury from last season, you're probably, and it was somewhat substantial, you're probably going to be on PUP. That's just how it is. That means you are not like 110% right here and right now. That's what that means. So, yeah, I could definitely see Teray being eased into camp practices, things like that. I mean, there were questions of, is that a 12-month injury? Is that a 10-month injury? I mean, what are we? That was early October, I think the Colts beat the Chiefs. So that was, we're coming up on 10 months.
Yep.
I mean, that's probably right around that. Mo, I know he played with a broken thumb last year. I probably need to double check that. So maybe it's a little bit of that. But yeah, those were the two. There was one other guy, Jegs something or other, some defensive lineman. And then the reason Blackman is on a different list is because Blackman did that in college. He didn't do it in an NFL game. I think there were some questions on why is Blackman on a different list. That would be like if remember when Mathis tore his Achilles training on his own that one off season? You know, he was that's a non-football injury, I think is what it's called. Basically what that means is you didn't do it under our own roof.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, there's a little bit of logistics behind it.
Well, this pod should drop after lunch, which is great because this question from Colts fan Cincy might be
oh gosh.
It's a little out there.
Oh gosh.
How many blowouts have you had to personally change? Follow up. How close to the contents have those diapers resembled 2020 thus far?
Yeah, I'd say pretty darn close there. Boy, the definition of blowouts can also be murky. Probably with your own kid, you think there's a few more blowouts than there really is. But, hey, I'll say this. Rosie Bowe can fill a diaper. She can, if Bobby Okereke can fill a hole like Rosie Bowe can fill a diaper, Colts will be in good shape this season. I'll leave it at that. My wife's probably like, good thing I don't think she listens to podcasts anymore, but if she was this far into it, she'd be like, you cannot do that anymore.
Tito wants to know, do you think the Colts could trade the loser of the kicking battle for a 4th or 5th rounder similar to what the Ravens did last year to the Vikings with Vedvik?
Oh, wow. Boy, if they did, give Chris Ballard GM of the year. Yeah, and with that Vikings, that was after a preseason game. That was And this is what I go back to with the Blankenship question of, like, how is anyone around the NFL going to know what Rodrigo Blankenship is looking like in practices?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, that Vikings kicker, I think, was perfect in the first preseason game, if I remember correctly, and hit a bomb, hit a 50-some yarder. Well, that's going to drive up his value because he's shown it to every other NFL team in a real game. I Blankenship, if he was that worthy, unless there's a slew of kicker injuries, would he have been drafted? It's kind of like, so yeah, I like, how do teams know if he's good or not in the NFL? So 4th or 5th round, I mean, that's just, can you imagine? That'd
be great.
That would be a GM that literally has not slept for 3 weeks. Like, waking up his wife at night being like, we don't have a kicker. We don't have a kicker. We're going to Carmel High School tomorrow. We're finding a soccer player. Like, we do not have a kicker. So, Tito, it sounds great, but in 2020, that to me is like a McLaughlin goes 14 of 14 in the preseason. That's a lot of field goals. McLaughlin goes 8 of 8, and Blankenship goes 7 of 8, and you trade Blankenship for a 6th or 7th round pick. Maybe, but I can't see it.
Matt used to not be a George Odom fan, mainly due to his penalties 2 years ago, but last year he played better. Wants to know, how come nobody talks about him being the free safety of the future? Interesting option, if not Hooker or Blackman.
Matt, I think you're onto something there, at least with the first part. Like, Chris, I feel like early on with George Odom, there was some TJ Green to him of, oh gosh, big hit, after the whistle, out of position a little. But he's reined that in very well, and I think George Odom is a really nice piece for this defense. But no, free safety of the future. It goes back to what you've invested into that group of, a first-round pick in Hooker, a 4th-round pick trading up for Kari Willis, a 3rd-round pick in Julian Blackman. Like, you've invested a lot. And I think Odom can still be one of your better sub-package guys, and he's a fine role. I tend to think, and I know he played well against Kansas City last year when he started, but I tend to think the longer George Odom is on the field, the more you see why he was, an undrafted guy. Very nice player, but the consistency of Kari Willis is different than the consistency of George Odom over a 60-snap game. So, he can be your first safety off the bench and play a huge role for you, but, you're not drafting Julian Blackman 85 to back up George Odom.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, you're not.
From Adam, if you were the Colts media, would you have just skipped the workout parts of Rivers' first day in the facility video? Watching him squat a broomstick didn't exactly get his juices flowing.
Come on, Adam. Content is content, folks. It's shit. We haven't had team sports since Rosie Bowe was 20 weeks old, or 20 weeks in the womb. I mean, it's sure. I would have loved to have seen Phil Rivers chuck the ball around to Michael Pittman on the practice field. But you know what? Having been inside that building and know how NFL teams work, what you're allowed to show is pretty limited.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what you're going to get, and be happy with it. Honestly, it's just, I'm not. I mean, Rivers was probably only allowed to do so much. Like, I don't even know if he was squatting a broomstick. I think it was more for like a measurement standpoint. Who the hell knows what he was doing? But, I think that a question I have, though, is how much will the Colts show of practice?
That's fair.
I remember back when the Reds, and I know it's different in baseball, when the Reds restarted spring training a few weeks back, they periscoped, like, live batting practice. I mean, I'm watching Sonny Gray against Joey Votto. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I can't see NFL teams going that far, but do you have any sort of live periscope? Do you cut up highlights and make them a little bit more juicy or longer or something? I would love to see that. I think fans deserve that. But like I say, I mean, the NFL treats things like it's the FBI at times. So, yeah, Adam, just be happy, man.
Greg, who loves the podcast,
Thanks, Greg,
has a question you'd already touched on a little bit. How do you think they will simulate high-pressure scenarios for the kickers with no fans during games? He's wondering if the field goal conversion rate will increase.
Yeah, Greg, it's no fans during games. I guess, I don't know. You have that one dude who's the far upright, not the one with the window at Lucas Oil. He always walks down to the front row. You ever see that? He's this old dude.
Yeah.
You must get the biggest kick out of it in the world. If I were in that section, I'd be like, dude, just sit on your ass, man, or sit in the stands and wave your arms. Nothing like saying, "Oh, I was on TV," or something, whatever. I don't know. I mean, like, I can't imagine Frank Reich's gonna be like, "Rodrigo, if you miss this, everyone's running wind sprints." I've never seen an NFL team run wind sprints during the practice, so I don't know really what you do to try to simulate it. I'm very curious. I'll be charting it. I'll be watching it, but sorry, Greg, I don't have a great. And that's why I think Blankenship, while he has been in, arguably he's been in more pressure pack kicks than Chase McLaughlin. You could make that argument. But the fact that Chase McLaughlin did in the NFL, it makes me think like Blankenship is going to have to go above and beyond, might be too big, but beyond Chase McLaughlin from a percentage standpoint in order to win the kicking battle.
Austin wants to know, with the limited offseason, do you think there's really a chance Chad Kelly makes the roster over Eason? I know that preseason games are a snooze fest, but was really looking forward to seeing Eason play.
I don't. No, I don't. I think Jacob Eason makes this team. I do agree with you, Austin. Preseason games can be snooze fest, but when you have guys like Chad Kelly and Jacob Eason play, it gets me a little bit more, on the edge of my seat to watch. And it's a kick in the you-know-what for both those guys, that they don't get preseason game reps. I will say that endlessly. And for Chad Kelly, it's a big hindrance to him that the offseason is how it is, because I think there's a point where, like, when you get to August 17th, Chris, and you go full pads, this goes back to what I was saying earlier about getting your frontline guys ready for the start of the season. How much time do you have to play around with who's going to be my fourth wideout?
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to be my third quarterback? Like, you're going with guys you trust, and you're going with guys that you believe in more long-term, I guess, as well, and all those things. So I don't it's not good. Yeah, it's not good for Kelly or Eason, but I think Jacob Eason makes this team, and I don't have a whole lot of debate about it.
From Lucas, 3 Colts made the NFL Top 100 in 2020. Buckner at 56, Leonard at 50, who was 24th in 2018, and Big Q at 32. Do you feel the players voting for it underrated the Colts and other Colts who didn't make it, like Kenny? And where would you put these 3 on the top 100?
Wow, Leonard dropped a lot. 24 to 50. Lucas, sorry to burst your bubble, and I get this, and Darius Butler and I were going back and forth on this on Twitter yesterday. Basically, this is how the top 100 list works. Used to be PR interns who just hand the list to players. I think the NFL Network actually now sends people out to complexes and hands them to players. Basically, they vote for their best friends 1 through 6. Then they vote for Patrick Mahomes 7 and Aaron Donald 8. Then they vote for the 3 best players in their own football team. That gets you to about 11. And if you're still invested at that point, you might vote for some of your college teammates that are around the NFL, or maybe a few clients of the same agency as you. And once you get to about 15, you're like, all right, I'm bored. I got practice starting in a half hour, and you hand the list back.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, this is I don't know if I've ever seen a player get past about 25 on that list. It's just, yeah, obviously they're able to make up a list of 100, which is nice, but I don't put a whole lot of stock into it. I know it's the offseason. I know fans are really intrigued by this is a player vote and all of that, but the legitimacy of this player vote, it's a bit Pro Bowl-like to me, to be honest with you. So Buckner 56, sure. Leonard 50, maybe a hair low. Big Q 32, that's probably more because he plays guard. He should be a little bit higher just on how good of a player he is, but please don't lose sleep over it. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. Just trust me.
From Keith, God forbid, if one injury could ruin the Colts season, who would you say it would be? Darius would be a great answer if we didn't have Okereke and Walker. Phillip, but we still have Jacoby, so his guess would be DeForest or Kenny Moore.
Yeah, I put Anthony Costanzo number 1 on the most indispensable. We did that a couple podcasts ago, right? Our most indispensable Colts, and Buckner was 2, but Costanzo's clearly 1. It's Costanzo to LaRaven Clark. Buckner would be significant for sure. My list of most indispensable was what? I think it was Costanzo, Buckner, Kelly, Rivers, Leonard.
Yes.
Yeah, and then Nelson, Kenny Moore, and Hilton all knocking on the door.
Yep.
Yeah, people disagreed with that, but I don't think we're disagreeing with Anthony Costanzo. That is by far number one on the list for me.
Casey with a K, what surprised you the most, if anything, from yesterday's calls with Ballard and Reich?
No opt-outs for now.
Yep.
You know, what's the number? The number's got to be over 20, right, around the NFL?
I believe it's over 20 at this point. I mean, heck, half the Patriots' defense said no thanks.
You know, Patriots are at 6. Yeah, I think that's the biggest storyline. Yeah, certainly the COVID stuff's interesting. The physical practices are interesting. The position battle stuff, obviously, the stuff that stands out to Chris Ballard, I'm going to be intrigued by. But from a, can you imagine if he would have said, I mean, basically what the Patriots have lost Braden Smith, Darius Leonard, and Kari Willis, right? I mean, Patrick Chung and Marcus Cannon and Dante Hightower. I mean, obviously Hightower and Leonard are on the same level, but you know what I'm getting at. So if he would have said any of those 3 names, we would have spent 15 minutes on the podcast saying, okay, who's your new right tackle? That's huge.
Yeah.
That's massive because you know you're going to have injuries in camp. But we record this now with our luck. You know, a player will opt out at 1:07 p.m. and Chris and I will text each other, you know, cuss words.
From Hunter, heard on local Louisville radio that Indy is moving on from Vinny. Fact or fiction?
Well, we got to get Hunter listening to local Indy radio. Hunter, tune in. You can listen via the web. You can listen via our app, 107.5 The Fan. The Colts have moved on. Fact or fiction? Fact means absolute fact. I would say whatever is like 99.9% of fact, that's what that answer is. Adam Vinatieri's still not retired, and he's a free agent. So technically, he could be signed by any team. He's been, the Colts have moved on from Adam Vinatieri, I guess, in a way, for 4.5 months. He's been a free agent since mid-March. But when Chris Ballard doesn't mention his name yesterday, okay, that's enough for me. And we've been saying it all along. Rodrigo Blankenship or Chase McLaughlin for your kicker.
Question from Trippin' Penguin. If Phillip Rivers tanks...
Do it again?
Trippin' Penguin.
Oh, wow.
If Phillip Rivers tanks early in the season, will the coaching staff insert Jacoby?
Can you imagine telling Phillip Rivers that you're going to bench him?
Well, he's not going to cuss at you.
I know, but man, is he going to be mad?
Daggum will be thrown around.
Oh, gosh darn it. Shoot. Oh, goof. Oh, golly. I mean, define tank. I can't see it. I mean, he's got to be like god-awful. I mean, he's got to be. You pay the dude $25 million to be your quarterback. You're going to give him multiple chances. I mean, you'd have to be a 2-5 football. You have to be worse than that. You got to be 1-6, and Rivers have thrown 13 interceptions and 2 touchdowns. I have no idea. Like, you got to be terrible. And not to bring up old topics, but you know my thoughts. If that's the case, here you go, Jacob Eason. I'm bypassing Jacoby, and a lot of people would disagree with that.
Matt wants to mix it up here a little bit. Do you think Indy will ever get an MLB team? Do you think Indy could support one? And also, what would be a good name for them?
Well, Matt, unfortunately, I don't. I don't think we would ever get a Major League Baseball team. There's just too many markets close by.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you got? Cubs, White Sox, Tigers, Indians, Reds, Cardinals. That's 6 teams. Brewers within a 5-hour drive.
Everyone around here already kind of has their allegiance elsewhere.
That's always the advantage I felt like the Pacers had, which is why I think a lot of times you see visiting fans at Pacer games. There's no NBA team in Cincinnati. There's no NBA team in Louisville. There's no NBA team in St. Louis.
Yep.
So you're getting all those fans of LeBron and Steph and Giannis and Kawhi. They drive in from those markets because if you're not seeing them play against the Pacers, you're driving a lot further to go see them play. So Major League Baseball really hurts. I would love it. We would love it. Yeah. I mean, it'd be awesome. We have just one of the greatest ballparks you could imagine in Victory Field, and I'm very disappointed that I'm not able to go out to some Indians games this summer. But I saw that turn into a golf course. Did you see that?
No.
Yeah, they're going to do a little par 3 course at Victory Field, like you got to rent out tee times and you tee off from the concourse a couple holes. And
the grounds crew has to love that idea.
Yeah. I think, well, good news is I think you are, well, I don't know if you play the holes out. That's a good question. I assume you play the holes out. But yeah, so, I don't know. I mean, I support is a fair question. That's, we aren't a massive city. Like I said, there's a whole lot of other Major League Baseball teams. It took a while for this city to adopt the Colts. And if Peyton's here, do we ever adopt the Colts? If Peyton doesn't come here. Like, that's fair. Nicknames, I got nothing, Matt. I'm so bad at that. I saw, Indianapolis Indians, I guess, are reviewing their team name. I saw the Indy Star come out with like 10 or 12 nicknames. I didn't like any of them.
I didn't see them.
It's like Cosmos and Arrows and Clowns and old indie baseball teams that have had, and I'm just like, we talked about this a couple podcasts ago. I'm so bad with nicknames. Like, I don't know what sounds good. Give me something that has a semblance of the city, put it in a poll, and let's vote on it.
Well, we both said Racers. That was the first one that popped in our head. I mean,
obviously that used to be a hockey team, and I don't know. I'm sorry, Matt.
Patrick thought you had a good question to Coach Reich during the press conference about the risk to the coaching staff. If Coach Reich did get the virus, who do you think would step in and assume the role of head coach?
Well, first, that's a fascinating question, Patrick, that you've asked that I haven't thought about. Secondly, the reason I asked that is because Colts Mexico asked me that earlier in the week. This is why this podcast is interactive.
Your questions could make it back to Ballard or Frank Reich, people.
You guys are doing my job. But in all seriousness, I was like, wait. That's a good question.
Yeah.
I hadn't really given that as much thought as I should. And Frank kind of downplayed it. And I didn't mean it as like a shot at Frank of like your own health. I meant like there's 20 other coaches on your staff. Several of them are much older than you are.
Mm-hmm.
Have any of them come to you with a concern? I don't know if Frank totally took it like that. But as far as who would be your interim head coach, I have no frickin' idea. When there was rumors of Pagano being fired mid-season, you had Joe Philbin on your staff.
Yeah.
Philbin was a former head coach, and the advantage you would have with Philbin is he is not one of your coordinators. So you're still allowing, at the time, Chudzinski and Monachino, I guess, still operate their own units and then just promote your O-line coach up.
Right.
I looked, and I don't know if the Colts have one guy on their staff that has ever been a head coach. Like anywhere. I know Mike Groh, their wideouts coach, was the offensive coordinator in Philly last year. Once Reich, left. But, I guess Eberflus for experience. But
it's a tough question.
Yeah, I don't know. Sirianni's so young and he's never even called the plays. You'd also be losing your play caller. I guess Sirianni would call the plays. Do you want him to be the head coach too? Probably not. So
just give it to Irsay. Just come on down.
I would absolutely love that. Oh my gosh, if Jim had the headset on, and God, that'd be awesome. Let's do an Abby's hat pick. See who would be. He'd be the old play caller or Blue. I see Blue. If this team can play half as good as Blue's TikTok, from what I hear, the Colts will be in good shape this year.
For Mac, just wondering, what do you think would have a better record? Peyton Manning with the team we currently have, or prime Andrew Luck in the Manning era Colts?
Oh, boy, give that to me again.
Who would have the better record? Prime Peyton Manning with this current roster, or prime Andrew Luck with the Manning era roster?
Oh, God. Mac, I'm trying to keep the listeners happy. There's no easy answer here. This is a no-win. Who do you piss off here? The 8 listeners we have that have named their kids Peyton, or, the Andrew Luck truthers that to be honest, I think it's got a clear answer. I think it's prime Andrew Luck.
So do I.
I really don't think there's much of a debate. You're giving Andrew Luck a Hall of Famer at running back, arguably his top two wideouts, his 2 pass rushers. The offensive line seems to be pretty darn good, and Dallas Clark isn't bad, and Bob Sanders, if he stays healthy, Luck. This is a nice roster the Colts have. They don't have 4 or 5 Hall of Famers on this team at key spots. running back, wide out, and defensive end. I mean, that's yeah. Peyton would be darn good with this team, but Andrew Luck with that team, man, sign me up.
All right, Kev, you need to help Zach here a little bit.
Okay, all right, I'm nervous.
So there's a lot of talk about Buckner playing the most important position on this defense, but he is not 100% clear why it's defensive tackle. Is it bringing pressure up the middle in general, or taking double teams for one-on-one matchups the rest of the line, or double teams creating lanes for the linebackers and Kenny on the design blitz, or all of the above, or something more technical, or tell him that he's just overthinking it?
No, Zach, it's all of them. All of them. All those reasons. You just listed 4 reasons, and I just nodded my head at all 4 of them. Like, that's why. There is a domino effect. There is a multiplicity effect, whatever you want to call it. DeForest Buckner impacts the game individually, and then you just said it. Across the defensive line, he absorbs some double teams. That opens up the edge rushers. If he's doing that, the linebackers are running a little bit more free. And if he's able to disrupt timing from an interior pressure standpoint, that helps your back end. Interior, he's the closest guy to the ball of anybody on your defense.
Mm-hmm.
So theoretically, if he's disrupting the timing, he can do it the earliest in the play. And this is like football 101. And if he's doing that, that can disrupt the entire play. That's why the old saying of you win in the trenches.
Yep.
Like, if you can't hold up there, you got no shot. So, yeah, Zach, all of it. You're good, man. Don't overthink it. Have a beer and smile.
Patrick's going to jump us back to the kicking situation here. Do you see a scenario where the Colts use a practice squad spot for one of the guys that doesn't win the kicking job, whether that be due to performance or possible COVID ramifications?
Patrick, usually I'd laugh at this. You know me. I'm like, why do we need 2 roster spots for a kicker? But I'm not. I'm not going to laugh. Having said that, I still think it's too valuable. Those spots are too precious, especially this season. The old cliche of, you prepare as a starter. If you're on our practice squad, you're a starter. Like, literally this year, they're kind of right. So I'm not going to laugh at it, but still the spots are a little bit too precious to me. Rigoberto kicked in college. You can always find a kicker on the streets. I know it wouldn't appease you, but, hopefully COVID-wise, you wouldn't be out for too long. But, yeah, I'm probably not doing that.
From JJ, the Colts returned 21 of 22 starters last year, and the result was a 7-9 season with a boring team. You said that the Colts expect few position battles and rookie starters in 2020. Do the Colts really expect different results with just few new players? Is Buckner so good that he's worth 4 or 5 wins, or are the Colts satisfied with mediocrity?
Well, JJ, I'm not going to go there. Buckner 4 or 5 wins, that's quite a lot. What I will say is this: is DeForest Buckner worth a win or 2? Sure. Is Phillip Rivers worth a win or 2? Sure. Okay. Now instead of 7-9, you're 9-7, 10-6. So that maybe you learn how to make an extra point. Now you're 11-5. I mean, it's not one player that's making this difference. It's, okay, a Buckner here, a Rivers here. We're not getting into Pittman or Taylor or Rhodes. We don't need to put pressure, that much, a full win pressure on those guys. Let's just go with the Rivers and Buckner. Was your quarterback play less than stellar last year? Yes. Can you improve there? Sure. If you do, that position really matters. That's a win or 2 in my eyes. And Buckner, does one player on defense mean that much when you can have the domino effect and you were as bad pass defense-wise as you were last year? Yes, in my eyes. That's another win or 2. And then, like I said, kicker-wise is kicker-wise. So, yes, the Colts do really expect a difference results with just a few players. And obviously you're expecting other guys to step up as well. But I think that's how you have to look at it. Did the Colts have a lot of one-possession wins last season? They did. But I think you're expecting a general step up and progression, and then also those guys at those important positions stepping up as well.
5 more questions left on this week's pod. This is from Matt, who says, it's been a long time. Hopes everything's well with you and your family.
Same to you, Matt. Good hearing from you. It has been a long time.
He's wondering if you'd want the Colts to go all in on Rodgers next year if he's available.
Well, now he's not with Danica, no.
It's amazing how that doesn't work out.
Yeah, shocking. Sure, why not? I'm all for entertainment. That's going to be tough. That's a whole lot of money. That gets back into our Dak Prescott debate a few weeks ago of the type of money you'd be throwing at a quarterback. But, yeah, Why not? I mean, all in. Yeah, it's if you don't fall in love, I will make exceptions. While I think the rookie quarterback contract makes a whole lot of sense for the next decade, if you can get, not even arguably, I would say a top 5 quarterback of my lifetime, Aaron Rodgers in his prime. Yeah. Manning, Brady, like maybe Mahomes, some people might throw in there. But, I mean, from a pure talent standpoint, Aaron Rodgers is certainly a top 5 quarterback in the last 30 years of football. And I was too young to say Favre or Elway, for those of you that are bitching. But, yeah, it'll be tough. But I'm making an exception. If I can get 5 years out of him, we'll find him some nice Midwest girl he can settle down with.
Chase has a fear that without the influence of Walker, Darius might decline a little. Yes, you have the huge upside with Okereke, and he's clearly a smart guy as well, but he doesn't know if enough can be said for Walker and Leonard together. Even though he will be expensive and maybe be better, how do you balance that trade-off when an upgrade at Mike may create a bit of a drop at the will?
Well, Chase, it's an interesting thought. I feel like at times we're treating Anthony Walker like he's, Darius Leonard's a star player, and Anthony Walker's his next-door neighbor, and you got to have, Anthony Walker's family's got to drive Darius Leonard to basketball practice, so he's got to be on the team as well.
Yeah.
I almost feel like we're going there. Walker's obviously much better than that. So, well, first off, I kind of think like Bobby Okereke is very smart. And this is a good question. I don't want to discredit it by any means. I just think Leonard's got to get around that. If you're truly a star player, you can't have and handheld is too like derogatory of a statement, but like, okay, you've got to start seeing that stuff. You got to start reading that stuff. You've got to, okay, whatever Anthony's doing that you need Bobby to do as well, tell that to Bobby when Bobby's on the field. And also Walker, while Anthony Walker led the team in tackles last year and I think played every game, he only played about probably, and I'm just guessing off the top of my head here. I could look it up pretty quick, actually. I'm guessing he played 70% of the snap counts. 70% of snaps all year long. So, I mean, not like a...
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Anthony Walker, 78% of the snaps. And I think a lot of that had to do with he probably played every single snap when Leonard didn't play. Yeah, he did. So his snap counts look like this: 57%, 59%. Leonard misses 3 straight games, 100%, 100%, 100%. Then Leonard comes back. He goes to 54, 76, 72, 72, 62, 89, 83. So, like, he's not on the field every single play. Yeah, I mean, some of that will factor into this, contract and all of that as well. But, I also think there's kind of a level of individual responsibility guys got to take.
Kevin, Aaron wants football. He's excited for the revamped Colts. However, he can't see how we can have pro football safely for all involved due to the nature of the sport and the continuing spike of the virus. College football, even less of a chance. What are your thoughts?
Well, first, Aaron, I want football. I want a healthy baby. I want a healthy wife. I want a healthy family. And I want football. I do. And I people laugh at this. If I wasn't working in this industry, I'd rather have college football than pro football. But that's for another story. I just love college football so much. Testing and behavior. Drill it home. Drill it home. Positives for me is this: Major League Baseball, no positives test outside of the Marlins. The Phillies aren't testing positive. That's good news.
Yes, it is.
Let's not lose sight of that. Let's also remember NFL teams theoretically will travel 8 nights the entire year, 8 road games. There's talk of some teams traveling day of. I don't know if we're there yet, but this is me. You fly into Jacksonville. Your security staff's gone in a day early. They've sanitized all the team buses. You go straight to the hotel. You're there at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And sorry about you, you're not seeing Jacksonville nightlife. And really, to like take fans behind the scenes a little bit, usually teams leave at 3 o'clock on a Saturday. You fly to that city, and players typically get 1 to 2 hours right when you land. So you're like 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock. You can go have dinner with your family if they're in town to watch you play. whatever, go to a mall, do something like that, and then you're in the hotel the rest of the night, and curfew's 11 o'clock. You got team meetings and treatment, all that. So it's not like you're sightseeing by any means. So basically, you just eliminate that 4 to 6 window.
Yeah.
Sorry. Make sacrifices. This is 2020, people. That's the name of the game. Having said that, you look at the Colts schedule, Chris. Pull up the Colts schedule for me, if you don't mind. And I was filling in for Dan earlier this week, and I think they only need to get on a plane one time until December. Read off those road games.
September 13th at Jacksonville.
Plane.
October 4th at Bears.
We can bus.
You can bus.
We can mega bus it.
The next week, October 11th at the Browns.
Can we not bus?
November 1st at the Lions.
Boom. And that's it.
November 12th, the Titans.
Is that on the road?
Yes.
Bus it.
This is the perk of being the crossroads of America.
Yeah, right.
So many of these cities are drivable.
Right, and I know every team obviously doesn't benefit from that, but more so what I'm getting at is Major League Baseball, you're playing on the road sometimes 3 nights during the week, 4 nights during the week. If you've got back-to-back road trips, you're on the road every single night. Yep. The NFL doesn't have that issue. Does the NFL have different issues? Yes. You have a sport where you tackle and slobber on each other, and you have bigger rosters. That is the big issue. But if you can handle things from a testing standpoint, you're traveling a whole lot less than Major League Baseball is traveling. And then also you just behave. We need everyone. Jeff Passan, Major League Baseball, had the quote of the year. Major League Baseball will continue to operate until a player gets too horny on the road. And that sounds wild. It's so true. We have all gotta lock in. Ballard and Reich said it yesterday. There'll be no visitors during the season. You know, sometimes they've got family, friends, stuff like that come in. No, you can't have that. And it's going to be a bit of an army, military type feel to it of like, okay, this is what we got to do. But if you're going to make your business work, we're all trying to make our businesses work right now. We all are trying to do that. If you're going to make this business work, this is what has to happen. College football. God bless the ACC for trying, and I'm glad that they've at least formulated a plan so like these schools know, okay, this is what we're doing. Let's try to operate. But the bubble's about to burst in college football. Like, we've seen some of these teams have to stop their workouts, but we've seen like Notre Dame have 2 tests and 800 tests or whatever. They've had great testing numbers. And a lot of schools have had great testing numbers. But now you're about to put 20,000 people on a campus or 10,000 people on a campus, and you can't bubble them. What do you put all college football players in a dorm? I don't know what you do. So that is my concern with college football.
From Ethan, what Colts were snubbed from the top 100 list? He knows that the list may be short, but there must be some people that the Colts players outperformed on that list, right?
Ethan, it is short. The 2 that come to mind immediately are Costanzo and Kenny Moore, but I probably wouldn't put Kenny Moore on there. Maybe Costanzo. How many offensive tackles are on that list? If there's more than 5, Costanzo should be on there. And Hilton. Hilton doesn't deserve after last year. It's more of a career. That's a very year-to-year award, not necessarily like a top 100 players in the entire NFL based off their careers. So, yeah, outside of Costanzo Moore, I got nobody.
All right. Last one this week comes from Logan. Giving the birth of his daughter, do you think Luck would have decided to sit out this season? And if you were a starting NFL quarterback, would you sit out?
Well, Logan, that's a good one. Okay, let's start with the hypothetical with me. If my family's healthy, I'm playing. Point blank. So, I even with the 7-week-old, full transparency, I have been tested for COVID-19 at some point during this whole process, and a big reason why is because I am around a young child. Like, that's a big reason why. So, but I think I could be able to try and be as healthy as possible, and there would be a money value. And that's like, I see people rip some of these guys for not playing. I'm like, I commend them for putting their family first because they're turning away millions of dollars. And like, yes, The Dante Hightowers and the Patrick Chungs, that's a little different. I think Marcus Cannon, if I'm not mistaken, is a cancer survivor. Like, I mean, there are some big time, factors weighing into these calls by him. But if I'm a young rookie and I am giving this up, the NFL will forget about you quick. I mean, they will. That's the harsh reality of this business. So it's and obviously I tested negative for any of those that are like worried that I might be seeping through the mic, or for Chris. If there are any risks, you aren't taking those chances. But at the same time, these guys look at it as I'm 23 years old and $1.2 million is different than 150,000 or whatever else the opt-out would be. So would luck have opted out? That's really interesting. It's a good point. Probably. But that's just total conjecture on my part. I have no idea if he would or not. That's a good one.
All right, well, that one wraps up the Twitter questions for this week.
I had 2 sneak in here at the end.
Okay.
Let me get these. Jason want to ask me about COVID practice rules. Name the 6. I'll do that one next week. Okay, Big Bama, our guy. Just watching tape on Michael Pittman. Is there a current or past player he reminds you of? To me, he has some Michael Thomas in him, where he's not going to wow you with speed and just knows how to get open and beat with his route running and possession receiver. I've said Cortland Sutton before for Michael Pittman. Michael Thomas is probably not listed as big as Pittman.
He's a pretty big guy, though.
He's big, but not like 6'4", 225, I think, or whatever Pittman's listed at. So that's kind of a name that I come back to, but I could see the Michael Thomas one. And then Eric goes with, what areas of the team do you think the national media are too high or low on? What area do you think Colts fans are too high or low on? Well, the national media, I think, is very low on Rivers. I think they're super high on, probably like the offensive line will solve all. I think that's kind of like where the national media is like, oh, yeah, they have the best offensive line in football. They'll be good. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, you're one injury away from really scrambling. So Colts fans too high or low on? I mean, if you're a fan of the Colts, you're probably too high on, like, you're always high on everything. Secondary, people are skeptical of. I don't, maybe pass rush is one that I'm like, just got to see it. Like, again, Ture's got to stay healthy. People are like, oh, yeah, he'll be 10 sacks. It's like, well, no. There's a lot to football than just what it looks like on paper. So, too low on. I keep on thinking if Trey Burton can be healthy, he can be a really good player. I don't think people are talking enough about him. So, yeah, those are a few that pop into my mind.
Cool.
All right, man. That's it for this week. Thank you for 2 this week. I appreciate that, Chris. I know kind of a crazy schedule. But as far as next week, like I said, I'm going to let this podcast breathe a little bit. We'll have some player Zooms in the next couple of days, weeks. We'll also have coordinators. And then I think Frank Reich every now and again. But, yeah, I will not be at the complex per se next week. So we'll still have some written content up on the site that you guys should definitely check out. But, yeah, that's how the next few days and week we'll look for Kevin's Corner. He's Chris Presley. I'm Kevin Bone. Everybody have a great weekend. Stay safe, and we'll be back next week with another edition of Kevin's Corner.